Hello, my lovely nerds. Guess who started today by breaking a fingernail? So I thought to myself, what will make my day better? Improve it a little bit for me. And I thought making a video for all of you lovely nerds would do the trick. So what's the thrilling topic for today's video? Well, I will be ranking all 8 seasons of Charmed. So I'm going to rank the seasons from least to most favorites. I put a lot of thought into this ranking, and there were actually a few surprises for me. Some seasons that I thought were going to be lower ended up higher, and vice versa. Now, of course, this is my own personal preference, and I will explain each season why I like/dislike it, my reasonings for having it higher or lower. And of course, I encourage you guys to put your own opinions and your own rankings in the comments. But just please remember, everyone has their own opinions, everyone has their own likes and dislikes, so please be respectful in the comments to each other and please to me. So the thing with me is that with Charmed, with most of the seasons, I can find something I like in that season. If it's a ship or a character arc or even a couple of episodes, I do personally think that the later seasons definitely dipped in quality, but there are still things to like in those seasons. So let's kick this list off with my least favorite season, the one right at the bottom of the totem pole. And this actually surprised me because I honestly thought that one of the last 2 seasons would end up being my least favorite. But when I really sat down and thought about it, I realized that my least favorite season of Charmed is season 6. So there are a lot of offenses this season, from small ones like Phoebe's atrocious haircut to big ones like the introduction of Magic School, which was the most blatant Harry Potter ripoff I think I've ever seen on any TV show. And of course, my biggest complaint this season, Chris. So it is kind of interesting that I dislike Chris so much, given that he is kind of Charmed's Connor from Angel, and I have a lot of sympathy for Connor, the child who grew up with a really traumatic childhood, didn't know his parents, etc. I feel like that's what they were going for with Chris, but they really dropped the ball. Now, I should say this is nothing against Drew Fuller, who I think does the best with the material that he's given, but I think the biggest issue is that Chris was originally planned as one thing and then changed into another. The rumor has long been that Chris was originally supposed to be grown-up Wyatt, and as we all know, grown-up Wyatt is destined to be evil. So that's why Chris's first appearance is really dodgy. He basically turns up at the end of season 5, lying his ass off, then he vanquishes Leo to Valhalla, and then, what I think is the most egregious moment of his, he murders 2 Valkyries in cold blood, and this is never brought up again. Like the son of a charmed one, the protectors of the innocent, killed 2 not only innocent people, but 2 Valkyries who are like forces of good in the show, and it never comes up again. And again, this is definitely down to the dodgy writing and the fact that he was changed from Wyatt to Piper's second son, Chris, when Holly Marie Combs became pregnant and they needed to kind of shoehorn that storyline in. But for me, it just doesn't work. Chris is so annoying. He's ragey, he's whiny, he's mopey. The whole shtick that he has with Leo, again, I know that it would definitely be hard to grow up with your father being so absent, but I'm guessing that his aunts loved him. I'm guessing that he had friends. And yes, losing your mother young sucks, but let's face it, all the Charmed ones went through that and they turned out fine. Chris's whole whiny, annoying, it's all about me shtick, really don't like it. And the fact that he's such a big character this season, so much focus is given to him, sometimes at the expense of some of the other characters, because the season is so focused on like getting Chris's story done and solving the mystery of who he is that we end up neglecting some of the other characters. Phoebe becoming an empath this season is another storyline I really don't like, especially since at the beginning it's kind of used to shill Alyssa Milano, that whole thing where she meets that reporter and she's all like, you don't like strong women, you don't like independent women. I feel like that's Alyssa Milano coming through in real life, and it really doesn't jive with the series. I'm not fond of Paige's whole random temp jobs, which somehow always connected to the magical world. I will say that I was one of those people that was always so upset when Paige gave up her social worker role, because I thought that was such a perfect role for her, and I really thought they could have worked her white lighter side into that role. Like, she could have found witches and people who needed help through that, but them throwing it out and then all of a sudden she's temping, like she's working at a fruit market, she's walking dogs, she's being a temporary receptionist. it was just a really odd storyline. Then we have that whole Richard storyline and the magical addiction, which, as we saw on Buffy, never really works. And I don't particularly think that the actor and Rose McGowan had that much chemistry, so that storyline really didn't work for me. We have yet another season of Piper and Leo being separated for no good reason, especially since you see them interact so much this season. It's like, why couldn't Leo have been an elder and still been with his family? If he's the main elder, why can't he make the rules? Also, Piper has that whole kind of weird sideline story with that romance with that fireman guy, Greg, which goes nowhere. And then there's that episode where Phoebe and Paige make her like the perfect guy. That one does actually have a little fun kind of like food fight at the end of it where Phoebe gets a face full of cake, so that is fun to watch. But overall, the vibes for season 6 for me are really off. The finale is kind of fun. I do like the alternate world, and I particularly love Barbara as the demon of like good and being all like, can't we just get along? The evil doppelgangers is fun, especially when they keep fighting each other and, you know, neither of them are going to win because they're exactly the same. So Phoebe versus Phoebe and Paige versus Paige. But overall, season 6, like, I really dislike it. And I honestly think it's one of the seasons that I watch the least and just know the least about. So that's my number 8. Season 6. It'll be interesting to see where it lands for some of you guys. But now, let's move on to number 7 on my list, which ironically is season 7. So season 7 for me is not as offensive as season 6. Like, there's not a lot of things that piss me off that much this season. For me, season 7 is just very blah. In fact, I think I've only watched this season once, maybe twice, and that's really, really odd for me. I rewatch seasons like they're going out of style. There are certain seasons of Charmed that I could rewatch on repeat for like a whole month. So the fact that I've only watched this season once or twice really speaks volumes about it. Season 7 is just one of those seasons where I feel like they don't quite know what they're doing that season. So we kind of have the aftermath of Leo killing Gideon from season 6, and so Leo is very broken and lost, and we have the Avatar storyline. Now, the Avatars very much remind me of Jasmine, the big bad from Angel in season 4. They have that whole "we'll bring peace" shtick, but you have to be mindless slaves. And I feel like they never really explained where the Avatars came from and why they were there and why they want to bring utopia to the world. And then, like, the Avatar storyline just kind of fizzles out and we go into Zanku. Now, Zanku is a fun villain, and the actor who plays him, whose name is completely slipping my mind, Ardith Bay, that's the one. Wait, no, is that his name in The Mummy? Is that the actor's name or the character's name? I'm going to have to look that up afterwards. But Zanku is a fun character, and given that season 7 was supposed to be the finale, I actually really love the final episode of season 7. The whole taking on new personas and pretending that they died, that beautiful shot where they walk off in their new disguises and Daryl sees them like walking off and he just kind of smiles and chuckles to himself, and then you hear the door close with Prue's sound. It was such a good finale. But the rest of the season is kind of lackluster. Paige has her whole romance with the agent Kyle, who is Jack from Dawson's Creek. He's another character that I feel kind of goes up and down. Like, he can be a real douche at times, and I'm pretty sure he's got some really dodgy actions, but then after he dies, he becomes like a white lighter, which I always thought should have been the plan for Andy, and that would have been fun to have like a really fun callback there. But Agent Kyle doesn't really do much for me. Piper this season, I can barely remember her storyline. I think it's mostly her trying to like save Leo from the Avatar's clutches and, you know, dealing with 2 new boys. But I can't remember much else of what she does. And if I recall correctly, this is the season where Phoebe is just desperately dating everyone because she has that premonition where she sees herself having a little girl. And so she desperately wants that to come true. And like, I totally get wanting your life plans to come to fruition and things that you've hoped for and dreamed for. If you see that they are in the future, I can see you trying to manifest them. But I think this is the season that makes everyone complain that Phoebe just wants a love interest when there's actually a deeper reason there, but it's just done so badly. Season 7 doesn't offend me as much as season 6. I don't have Chris to contend with, and some of the episodes are fun, like Charmed Noir is a great episode. I actually really like the pirate episode because it's just kind of stupid and funny. And like I said, I think the final episode is really good and is a much better finale than the saccharine crap that we got from season 8. But overall, season 7 is a very forgettable season for me. All right, moving along, we are now up to number 6 on my list. So again, remember, we're going from least to most favorite. So coming in at number 6 is the final season for me, season 8. Season 8, I don't think is as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I think there's actually some okay stuff buried in here, but I think the biggest problem was the introduction of Billie, who, again, I actually don't think is that bad a character. In fact, better with Bob, who does fantastic charmed essays. Everyone should go look him up and follow him now. He has a fantastic video on Billie. I'll see if I can link it below, where he goes through her character and basically points out how she's really not as bad as the fandom makes her out to be. There's just some issues with the writing and the way she was introduced. I personally also think that Kaylee Cuoco was miscast. I think she's great at comedy. I don't think she's fantastic in a CW drama. And I think that her storyline was just rushed. I think if she'd been introduced in season 7, then maybe we would have taken to Billie a little bit more. I think that her character is very interesting. She is supposed to obviously be the younger generation, and she was brought in so that she could do more of the action scenes and, of course, wear the sexier costumes that the girls were by this point refusing to wear. But I think that her storyline is very rushed. But she's not the worst character who's been introduced in this show, and she's not even the worst character in season 8. That goes to her sister Chrissy, or is it Christy? Again, I don't watch season 8 that often, but Billie's sister, her whole background of being taken by demons and everything, again, could have been really interesting if it wasn't so rushed and done so badly. We also lose Leo for a good portion of this season. There were budgeting issues that made it so that they couldn't have Brian Krause for like 8 episodes, so they just kind of freeze him in a block of ice, and the Angel of Destiny takes him away. So that is a little bit annoying, but he and Piper are at least together for most of his season, and they're happy, and they're pretty stable, so that's good. I also really love Henry and Paige. I wish that Henry had been introduced a little earlier. Like, I wish that he'd been introduced in season 7 instead of the FBI agent, and that Paige's and his relationship had grown from there. But Henry, when he actually is introduced, is a great character. He's down to earth, he's solid. He actually reminds me a lot of Andy, which makes a lot of sense because Paige is very similar to Prue, so I think it makes sense that she would end up with a guy similar to the guy that Prue would have ended up with. I think that he and Paige have really good chemistry. I love that when she reveals her secret, he actually accepts it, and I love their wedding. Side note, I absolutely love Paige's wedding dress, and her wedding dress is my favorite of all the wedding dresses we see on the show. I also really like Coop. Again, I get that he was rushed, and I get that we definitely should have had more development, but I have never been a Phoebe and Cole fan, and I'm going to talk more about that when I end up ranking season 3. I preferred Coop. I just wish that, again, we'd gotten a little bit more build-up, but Phoebe ending up with a Cupid is kind of beautiful, especially when you remember the season 2 episode when she met the first Cupid, and he helped open her back up to love and show her that she doesn't need to be afraid. So the fact that she ended up with a Cupid, I think that is beautiful. Now, my biggest gripe with season 8 is the finale. I just think it is way too saccharine, and I recently found out that they didn't have Rose McGowan for a big portion of the finale. She had already gone to film something else, so that's why when Piper finds Phoebe in the rubble of the house, we don't see her find Paige, and I know that frustrates a lot of characters because it really makes it look like Piper is favoring Phoebe, but it's actually because Paige wasn't physically there, like Rose wasn't physically on set, and that's also why the finale very much focuses on Piper and Piper moving through time. I also remember getting very disappointed when I found out that Shannon didn't know that the fans wanted her to come back so badly, and she said that had she known, she would have returned, and so that missed opportunity just makes me really, really disappointed. And I just really don't like this whole let's wrap everything up in a bow thing. Let's have this montage of everyone's families and everyone's happy and everything's worked out. It's too tastes like diabetes for me, and I can't get behind it. I much prefer the open-ended season 7 finale to the season 8 finale. But let's keep moving on. We are almost halfway through. So now we are up to number 5. Again, least to most favorite. And ironically, my number 5 goes to season 5. Now, season 5 is where I think the show started to get kind of stupid. This is where we start to get the fairies and the nymphs and the leprechauns and all of the really whimsical stuff. The magic becomes very over the top in season 5. With that being said, I really genuinely enjoy season 5. I love seeing Piper's pregnancy. I love seeing the powers that she gets from the pregnancy. I love the episode where she gives birth, the day the magic died. It's such a beautiful episode. It's such a funny episode. And I love seeing her and Leo as new parents and navigating that new chapter of their lives. Now, Phoebe this season has that whole, like, her career's taking off and she's doing interviews and getting billboards. And knowing now what I know about Alyssa Milano behind the scenes, it's so obvious now why they gave Phoebe this path and why they pushed her into being this big celebrity when I don't think I've ever heard of an advice columnist becoming, like, such a huge deal that she has billboards and is doing TV interviews and is being offered book deals. It all feels a little unrealistic, but I also don't mind seeing a career-focused Phoebe. She had so much lack of focus in the early seasons that it's actually kind of nice to see her tunnel her focus into something productive. Now, the fallout between her and Cole is not handled well in season 5. While I like that the show acknowledges what a bad influence Cole was on Phoebe and acknowledges that the relationship did get very toxic, borderline abusive, what I don't like is that they alleviate Phoebe of any guilt. Her whole becoming queen of the underworld, going against her sisters, that is all completely forgotten. And all of a sudden, Cole is just the bad guy. And they almost seem to forget that, like, Phoebe and Cole once upon a time had, like, a genuine love between them. They treat it like she was never really that in love with him when, and I say this as someone who doesn't even ship Phoebe and Cole, we know that that's complete bullshit. We know that they were desperately, deeply in love. I mean, part of the whole Queen of the Underworld happened because she was so in love with Cole. And they do have that beautiful scene at the end of A Mermaid's Tale where it seems like they're going to start giving them a decent reconciliation, but then it all goes to crap. Funnily enough, Cole is actually not one of my favorite characters, but I do believe that he deserves much better writing, and season 5 really shows that. He really should have died during Long Live the Queen in season 4, and the fact that they just keep dragging his storyline out, I think that is one of the biggest detriments of season 5. So Paige this season has her whole discovering her magic, and I actually really like that angle. Again, it very much reminds me of Prue, but like I said before, I really don't like that she gave up her social worker job. That just seemed like such a perfect match for her, and especially that she gave it up as she finally got promoted, something that she was waiting for all of season 4. But I do love her trying out new magics. I do love the little gag at the beginning where Leo's like, look at what the potion did to your hair, and Paige is all like, do you know how much this costs to do at a salon? And I really love the culmination of her powers becoming like them taking on the powers of the gods. The season 5 finale is one of my favorite Charmed finales. I think it is so fun, even though it is so stupid. The Titans coming down, the girls becoming goddesses, Piper getting her mother nature on, and even though I truly hate that they broke up her and Leo again because it was completely unnecessary, Holly Marie Combs in the scene where she tells Leo to just come home, you can see her heart breaking in real time on screen. It's amazing, and I think it's done so well. I have to admit, I also kind of like the whimsy that gets into season 5. Like, the show kind of stops taking itself seriously, and you have episodes like the Nymphs Just Want to Have Fun episode or the Lucky Charmed episode. The Sense and Sensibility episode is one of my favorites. The peak comedy of the girls not being able to communicate. Poor Paige can hear and see everything but can't speak. I absolutely love the oh, I see. Well, I don't. Where is Paige? And it's just a fantastically funny episode. And I think season 5 has a lot of those and a lot of fun. The superhero episode is also really fun. And I just really love the whimsical feeling of season 5. But it definitely loses some of the drama. And it definitely starts to make the series a little bit sillier. And that kind of comedic tone, that over-the-topness that we see for the rest of the seasons, that definitely starts to creep in around season 5. So we have now reached top 4. And I have to admit, the next two rankings, when I sat down and thought about these rankings and realized where they were, definitely surprised me. So coming in at number 4, my fourth favorite season is season 3. Now, I really never thought that I would rank a Paige season over a Prue season because I am such a Prue stan. But when I sat down and really thought about this, I realized that as much as I love season 3, it's not cracking the top 3. And to be honest, there are 2 reasons for that. Phoebe and Cole. I was never a fan of the Phoebe-Cole relationship. Their gross tongues everywhere, kissing always put me off. And I didn't actually think that Alyssa and Julian had the kind of crazy chemistry that everyone seemed to think they had. I mean, they definitely had chemistry, but I swear I saw more chemistry between him and Shannon in The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed than I did between him and Alyssa the whole season. But honestly, the Phoebe-Cole relationship definitely brings down season 3 for me. I find it really frustrating to watch. I truly hate how much Phoebe is willing to turn on her sisters for Cole. I hate that she lies ties to them until Cole starts to straighten himself out after the good, the bad, and the cursed. I really have a hard time dealing with his and Phoebe's relationship and all the back and forth and is he evil and will he kill her or won't he kill her? For me, it gets frustrating. It's not endearing. It's not intriguing. It's just there, and I just wish it would go away. Piper and Leo also this season drags it down a little bit for me until they get married. Again, this is a season where the elders really start to interfere because this is a season where we really start to get the lore kind of starting to build. But I feel like it's a little too late. Like, why weren't they intervening in season 1 when all of this started? Why are we intervening now when they're actually fully in love and willing to make a commitment to each other? Their wedding is gorgeous. The whole Prue astral projecting out of her own body unconsciously, or subconsciously, I should say, was a really fun twist. But before that, I definitely find it hard to deal with. And Prue this season, she takes a bit of a backseat. Season 2, I think, is really the season that gives her the best development. Here, she's doing her photography. She doesn't have a main love interest, which I actually really like. I do like that we do get a little bit of the whole, she is now trying to figure out what her role is now that her sisters don't need her anymore. Like I said, astral projecting out at Piper's wedding. Phoebe ends up realizing that it's because Prue is wanting a life for herself. She's wanting to break away from her family and she doesn't quite know where she belongs after her sisters have now grown up and don't really need her. So I do think that is fun. There are also some fan-frickin-tastic episodes in season 3. All Halloween's Eve is my favorite Halloween episode from any TV show. I absolutely adore it. Primrose Empath is another one. Again, another great episode for Prue. I do love Just Harry. That one is a really fun one. Blinded by the White Lighter is frickin' fantastic. I absolutely love seeing the slight inner workings of the elders, the White Lighter knees. The whole character of Natalie to work as a foil for Leo was absolutely fantastic. And we get some absolutely brilliant lines from that episode. I also really love San Francisco. Prue getting pride and not being able to get rid of it is fantastic and so suiting for her character. And of course, season 3 does have a fantastic finale. All hell breaks loose. I think it's one of the highest rated Charmed episodes, and you can see why. It was directed by Shannon, and I'm pretty sure in the behind the scenes, everyone said that she gives her all to directing. She would really go in and really work with the actors and work with the behind the scenes crew, and you can really see it here. Her and Holly, their acting in this episode blows me away. And it's such a heart-wrenching episode. It's a what if episode. What happens if the girl's powers are revealed? And we see that it is not pretty. And I just think it's just a beautiful episode. And it ends on that cliffhanger, which of course we then found out in season 4 that we weren't getting Shannon back. But overall, season 3 is really, really solid, but it doesn't crack my top 3. And that to me was a surprise. So we've arrived at the top 3 lovelies. Can you guess what order they're going to be in? Well, I won't keep you in suspense. Coming in third is season 4. I love season 4. I think season 4 is one of the best written, tightest, and most important seasons for character development and for the show as a whole, because obviously this is a season that introduces Paige and the new dynamic, and we had to see how fans were going to react to that. I've done a whole video on how Paige was introduced into the series and how well they kind of brought her into the family slowly, showing Piper and Phoebe's grief, showing their reluctance to get close to Paige, and also showing how Paige for the season very much lives in Prue's shadow, and that almost gets extended into parts of season 5. And so what I really like is that the show did not forget Prue. It didn't just kill her off and say, that's it, she's gone. We had whole episodes dedicated to the girl's grief over her. The opening episode is fantastic. I love that Paige attended Prue's funeral. I love that line at the end where she says, I feel like I lost her too. I think that's a beautiful acknowledgement of everything that Prue will continue to mean for the girls. And then you've got episodes like Hell Hath No Fury, that breakdown of Piper, just that raw emotion that you feel when someone you love deeply dies. Holly Marie Combs in that episode, amazing. I also love that we get to explore Paige's grief over her parents' death. She shares that with her siblings, the fact that she lost her parents young, and Paige has the added horribleness of she blames herself for it. So A Page from the Past is a beautiful episode, really exploring Paige's grief and her guilt. And I love that in episode 1 of season 4, Paige mentions that she doesn't drink, and then we see why in a page from the past, and that is something that continues through the series, and I think that's a really great character beat, and it shows that they really put a lot of effort into building Paige as a character. Now, Cole becoming the Source this season was a bit of a dodgy storyline. I've talked about that in my Cole video, how Charmed failed Cole Turner, and I talk about how the biggest issue was that Charmed wanted to have their cake and eat it too. So we spend the whole of the first season building up to that moment where they're going to kill the Source, and they do that, and we have that whole beautiful for Prue moment, but then the Source's powers go into Cole, and the series can't seem to decide if Cole is being infected with the evil or if the Source has actually overtaken Cole and Cole is still alive inside of there. They eventually end up just kind of merging it and saying that, like, yeah, it's Cole, he's just got the Source's power. And I actually think that the episodes We're Off to See the Wizard and Long Live the Queen are fantastic episodes. I really love the Seer. I think the Seer is one of the most underrated bad guys in Charmed. She is fantastic. And the way she pulls the strings and the way she's kind of always got her fingers in a million different pies, she's fantastic. I thought Phoebe's pregnancy was really interesting. The way that she knows it's not hers, but it still is on some level. And I actually do think that Phoebe's attachment to Wyatt in season 5 is about her losing her pregnancy in season 4. And I also just think season 4 has some really great episodes just in general. Brain Drain is a great episode. A lot of people seem to think that it's a ripoff of the Buffy episode Normal Again, but Brain Drain actually came out first. And this is not a storyline that's unique to Charmed or Buffy. Smallville also do it. Supernatural also do it. So Piper being, in the mental hospital and her working through her issues over Prue, her issues over not being able to have a life. I actually thought that was a really well done episode. I also really like the episode that has Cole confront his past. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it's the one where there's a woman who thinks she's seeking one demon who killed her husband, but then when she sees Cole, she realizes it was actually him, and that's the one where Phoebe gives him the potion to turn him human, and we lose this great opportunity to see Cole as a human. But overall, I do think that the storyline in season 4 is so strong. I love watching Piper, Phoebe, and Paige become closer. I love watching Paige, not really understand magic at first. We see in Hell Hath No Fury when she steals a Book of Shadows and she ends up getting those massive boobs because she casts the Karma spell. And so I just think season 4 is so tightly written. And then when we get to the end and we get to that episode where the Angel of Destiny comes to give them that choice of whether or not to become mortal, Phoebe and Piper, you can feel the weariness coming off them. You can feel how battle-torn they are and how they are so ready to just give this up and lead normal lives. And of course, Piper has recently found out that she can't get pregnant because of what they do. But I also love that they choose to stay on their path and they choose to remain the protectors of the innocent. And it's such a beautiful, reaffirming, almost soft reboot of the show saying, yes, we've got our powers. We're going to be the power of 3. Let's go forward from here. So that's why season 4 ranks higher than season 3 for me, because I really do love so much about it. And I just love the way they do the character work. They do the grieving for Prue and the way they don't let us forget Prue, but they also make it so clear how important Paige is going to be and how well she's going to fit into this dynamic. All right, guys, we've arrived at the top 2 seasons, my 2 absolute favorite seasons of Charmed. These are the 2 seasons I watch over and over again, the ones I know off by heart, and coming in at number 2 is season 2. Now, I know that a lot of people do not like season 2. Season 2 gets a very bad rap. And I do think that a lot of that comes down to the Piper, Leo, Dan triangle, which granted is very annoying, but I personally don't find it as annoying as Phoebe and Cole. Poor Dan, he was always going to be the Riley of the Charmed fandom. There's nothing particularly offensive about him, it's just that he's not Leo, and I also think that he definitely pushes Piper further than she's comfortable with. He wants to immediately move in, he's talking about having babies, I'm surprised he didn't actually propose, and it's very obvious from the beginning that Piper is just not as into him. So you know that it's going to be Leo, and I understand how the journey to Piper choosing Leo could be really frustrating for some fans, but I personally can deal with it. Now, what I love about season 2, one of the big things I love about season 2 is that I think it is Prue's best season. I think she gets some fantastic character development in this season. First, she's grieving Andy, and we see the fallout of that, and I think that's done really well. Then she has her whole trying to find herself. You can see that Buckland's is changing, and she's kind of changing as well, and it's just not as good a fit as it was in season 1. And even though the photography bit came a bit out of left field, we definitely could have had more build up there. career, once she gets into that profession, I really like seeing her flourish, and I really love seeing her grow and kind of strike out on her own and do something that's a bit outside of her comfort zone. Like, Prue is very rigid. She's very controlled. She likes things a certain way. And so striking out in a career that doesn't provide security, that isn't going to guarantee her a steady paycheck, that's a big thing for Prue, and I really, really love watching it. She also doesn't really have a set love interest this season. I mean, she's got Jack, but I really love the way that was played out, how it was never serious in Prue's mind. Jack was just the way to kind of open her back up to being open to love, and he knew that, and she knew that, and so it never really became serious, and I really like that for Prue, because she didn't need another relationship. She's still grieving Andy, so I think that Jack is a really fun character for what he is, and that he really helps Prue out. I also really love her connection with Bane. Miss Hellfire is one of my favorite episodes of season 2, and I love that he ends up coming back in Give Me a Sign, and that she actually ends up helping him to change his life, and he thanks her for that, and their connection is so gorgeous. Prue actually reformed a bad boy. Like, who does that? That is a fantasy a lot of us had when we were younger, and it never pans out, girls. Don't ever believe that you can fix a bad boy, but somehow Prue Halliwell can, because she's amazing. I also really love Phoebe this season, because I love seeing Phoebe go to college and be a college girl and actually start to get some direction in her life. Again, she doesn't have a solid love interest this season, which I really love. It's really just her on her own. And it's really nice to see Phoebe have some direction and have, she kind of is maturing this season. She's still Phoebe. She's still fun. She's still a little bit irresponsible, but I really, really love watching her go back to school. Piper, of course, this season, it's mostly about her love interest, so she doesn't get that much growth, but this is the season where she opens up P3, so we do get to see that grow, and we do get to see her coming out of her shell a little bit, becoming a little bit more assertive. I do really love the episode where it's after she has the Arroyo fever. Again, the name is slipping out of my mind, but the doctor ends up getting back in contact with them, and he accidentally becomes infected with their powers, and then they ended up having to, let him die. And Piper is devastated by this, because this is the man who saved her life, and this was not a bad man. This was not a cruel person. It was someone who got their powers and became infected with the overload of having the Charmed One's powers and what he could do with them, and it just ended up coming to such a sad conclusion. Astral Monkey, that's the episode I'm thinking of. Seeing Piper there, just that emphasis of what a good person she is, how she wants to do the right thing, even though it's not really the best option. I really love seeing that about her. Season 2 also has some of my favorite episodes of the series. Morality Bites, which I still think is the best episode of the series, is in season 2. I have a whole video essay just on that episode. Like I said, I also love Miss Hellfire. You've also got episodes like Murphy's Luck, which I absolutely love. That one has a very young, very unknown at the time Amy Adams. For the longest time, for me, she was the chick from Charmed. And I love that episode because that touches on Prue not being in a good mental state. And I think it's very important to see that even strong characters can have mental issues, can have dark days, can have depression. And while it's a bit of a clunkily done episode, I still think that it's really, really important, and that the message gets through really clearly. On the other end of the scale, you have Chick Flick, which is one of my absolute favorite episodes ever, and just really shows how well Charmed can do comedy. We have, big screen horror monsters coming off the screen to kill the girls. There's this great scene where they're all running around the mansion trying to hide. And the mansion, of course, is a fantastic place to hide because it's so big and it's got so many rooms. And we see a lot of slasher cliches being talked about, and there's a lot of fun in that episode. There is also the episode Apocalypse Not, which I think is one of the most underrated episodes in Charmed. It's basically the trolley problem. The episode opens showing how close the girls have become, how their magic has bonded them, how them being back together has bonded them. And they're asked the question, if there is a burning building, who do you save? 5 strangers or 1 sibling? And at the beginning, they all answer 1 sibling, but then they accidentally vanquish Prue along with the god of war, or the demon of war, and they find out that if they bring the demon of war back by bringing Prue back, they'll bring about the apocalypse, and they have to make the very hard decision to let Prue die. And because of that decision, they're rewarded by receiving her back and the horsemen of the apocalypse being destroyed. But I think it's such an interesting episode because of the moral conundrum that it brings up. And one scene I really love in Apocalypse Not is the final scene where the girls are asked the question again. And now they all answer 5 strangers. But if you watch them very carefully, I'm going to go into over-analysis mode here. Look at the facial expressions of the 3 girls as they answer this question because it perfectly reflects their minds. Phoebe says it with this kind of warm acceptance. She knows that that's the right thing to do, but she's also accepted that if she does the right thing, she'll be rewarded and get her sister back. So she has that in her. Prue answers it with a very kind of acceptance, like, yes, it is 5 strangers, and she's almost proud. Her sister's made that choice, so she can accept it, and she's accepting. But Piper rolls her eyes as she's saying it. Piper is saying this under duress. Piper's got a bit of Winchester-ness in her. She is definitely a let the world burn for your sibling type, and she does not like the fact that she has to put innocence first sometimes. And I just love the way that Holly plays that and the way she so perfectly plays that Piper's gonna say yes, but she's saying yes under protest. So I know that season 2 gets a lot of flack from fans. I know that a lot of fans really don't like it, but it used to be my favorite season, and I will always, always love it. So we're finally at number 1, my lovely nerds, and I'm guessing that you all already know what it's going to be. I mean, duh, there's 8 seasons, and I've already listed 7, so number 1 is, of course, season 1. The OG. I swear, there is no season like this season. Like, all the other seasons feel a little similar. Like, seasons 2 and 3 feel like each other. Seasons 4 and 5 feel like each other. Seasons 6, 7, and 8 feel like each other. But season 1 feels standalone, and it has this insane magical feel that just gets lost after this. Everything from the score to the aesthetic to the fact that for a lot of their spells, they actually have to like really do a lot of stuff. Like the first spell that they cast to get rid of Jeremy, they have to make a puppet. They have to find 12 candles. They have to sit in a circle. They have to recite the incantation, as opposed to the later seasons where Piper just blows them up, or they just recite a spell and boom, the bad guy's gone. Season 1 for me is so cozy. It's got that beautiful, cozy, warm feeling from like late 90s shows. The pilot is one of my favorite pilot episodes ever. I think it does such a great job of introducing the girls, their dynamics, and what they're going to be like over the season within the first 10 minutes. The introduction of Daryl and Andy is also fantastic. Again, we have that beautiful score that almost sounds like wind chimes and bells and adds this really gorgeous feel of like natural magic. And that's another thing about season 1. It definitely leans more into the Wicca side and that side of magic as opposed to the supernatural drama type of magic. A lot of the magic this season feels a lot more organic, a lot more earned. And I love watching the girls learn as they go and trip and stumble. It's a really great learning process. All 3 of the girls get great arcs this season, but I particularly love Prue and Phoebe and the way their relationship starts as this really kind of aggressive and antagonistic, almost mother-child dynamic and turns into this beautiful sister dynamic. The Power of Two is a fantastic episode because it really shows how far Phoebe has come and how Prue needs to acknowledge that. But it also has Phoebe acknowledging her own flaws and acknowledging that she wants direction in her life, and Prue reassuring her that she'll get it. And it's such a change from when you watch episode 1 and Prue is so cold and so antagonistic and so not ready to give Phoebe a chance. So I love watching those 2 grow. Piper has Quake this season, and like, I know we all love P3, but there was this coziness to Quake that I really loved, and I kind of wish that we'd had the restaurant into season 2. And we get to see Piper manage that. We get to see some really fun episodes, like the episode where she constantly freezes the guy who keeps dropping things, and she's so proud about how she's getting control over the unfreezing part. And so I really like her kind of journey to discovering herself. And of course, she and Leo have a bit of a romance this season, and it's much more mild this season and a little bit more low-key. They definitely had not figured out the lore at this point because Leo talks about how he's the White Lighter, but he has to keep it secret, which makes no sense because if you're supposed to be their guide, then they should know that you're supposed to be their guide. But it almost doesn't matter because the season just feels so good and so homey and just so beautiful. You also have, again, some absolutely fantastic episodes this season. I mean, aside from the opener, you've got Which Prue Is It Anyway, where we get 3 versions of Prue, absolutely hilarious. You've got that 70s episode, which I absolutely adore, the girls going back in time, meeting their mother, which is such a big deal for them, and I love the way they all react to Patty and how Phoebe tries to warn her at the end, but then realizes that she really shouldn't and that she can't change the past. You've also got The Witch Is Back, which is the first introduction of Melinda Warren. I really, really love that episode. I love the way that they introduce Melinda Warren and how we get to learn a bit about the girl's ancestry. That's fantastic. From Fear to Eternity, which introduces us to Barbas, who goes on to be one of, the biggest and best demons of the series. That's another episode where Prue and Phoebe kind of confront their relationship. Phoebe calls out Prue for not being able to say I love you, and so we see Prue grow a little bit where she says I love you to both her sisters at the end of the episode. Is there a Woogie in the house? Again, I absolutely love this episode. I love more of the lore about the Charmed Ones. Again, we have that whole hint that Phoebe could go dark. They talk about how their house is a nexus for magic and how Phoebe being born physically in the house, it means that she could be good or evil, and they just kind of never bring that up again, but I really, really love that little bit of lore. I thought it was just so interesting. I also think that Rex and Hannah, who are the original villains in this season, are fantastic. Rex in particular is so smarmy and so slimy and so much fun, and I really love that we get a hint at the end when they're kind of vanquished. Hannah's saying, no, it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault. So you get that hint that there is something bigger than the girls and that we're definitely going to expand into it. Oh, I can't believe I didn't mention Dead Man Dating. Very, very young John Cho, one of the first things I ever saw him in, and he plays a ghost who Piper falls in love with, but it's an absolutely beautiful episode. It's almost like a self-contained little love story, and I am thinking about doing a video essay on that in the future because I think it's just such a well-written romance that there are fans like me who still ship Piper and Mark, even though he's only there for one episode, but that episode is just so well done. Overall, season 1, I rewatch it all the time. I can quote pretty much every episode verbatim. I love the fashion in season 1. It's before we start to get into the really ridiculous over-the-top fashions. There's actually this color scheme where you'll often see Prue in white and Phoebe and Piper in either blue or pink, and they'll switch it up. So they have this kind of color coordination going on. It's very, very 90s, but it's also really, really fun. I just think season 1, like I said, it has that coziness, that witchy feel, that Wicca feel. Everything about it is just so gorgeous, and I wish that feel had kind of carried into the rest of the seasons. All right, my lovely nerds. Well, that is it for today. Definitely made me feel better about my broken nail. I'm hopefully going to go and get this fixed this afternoon. But what are your rankings? Please share them with me. Let me know which seasons you like, which seasons you don't like. But as always, please be respectful. I will be back soon, hopefully with more videos for you. But until then, my lovely charmed nerds, stay well, stay safe, and I will see you soon.